Hi everyone, welcome back and welcome to another reading. This will be your general read for October 2023 for those of you who have a Taurus sun, moon, or rising. And if you don't identify as a Taurus and it's the title or the thumbnail that drew you into this read, I encourage you to stick around. We all have each sign in a different house of ours. So there may be something meaningful that you can take from this reading and apply, just depending on which of your houses Taurus falls in. I'm sorry that you guys didn't get a reading for September. I guess it just wasn't meant to be. But I'm thankful for the kind words that some of you have said to me, and for the donations that you've given me. I really appreciate it. The words more so than the donations. I'm thankful for the cash, don't get me wrong, but my energy has been waning a bit when it comes to releasing these videos because they don't get a lot of exposure. So, I'm human. I do find myself wondering, is it all worth it? And I think that you know better than most how demoralizing it can feel when you're putting advice out into the atmosphere and it feels as though it's falling on deaf ears. That being said, the messages that were conveyed to me from you, it made me feel as though it helped me reconnect with why I do this and why I release these videos, and that's why I'm here again. That being said, let's talk about you. I need some water. One of the cool things about recording in the kitchen is that the refrigerator is right there. The world coming out first, and the Queen of Wands at the bottom of the deck. Do you get it now? Are you finally beginning to get the picture? Are you finally beginning to understand how it's all connected and what it all means? Sure, you may think that it's a shame that it had to all break down before you could have this breakthrough, or that you had to get to this point to realize what it's more so like understanding. And that's the thing about understanding, right? And getting the full picture. Someone can lay it all out to you from point A to Z. But if you're not ready to understand their perspective, or if you're not ready to, it can just be hard sometimes to understand someone else's logic, or to understand someone else's perspective, to understand their reasoning. And I think that you're coming into knowledge about the way that something or someone works. And it's a full circle moment for you. Yes, this person could be a fire sign. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but this is an individual who doesn't need validation. They don't need your approval, and it may even feel at times like they don't need your guidance or they don't need your advice. The thing about understanding is that when you truly understand, it doesn't need to be explained to you. And I think that that's the shift that's happening here. You understand why they're so defensive. You understand their boundaries now. You understand their perspective. So it's very revelatory. I fear that you might be waiting for them to come back and relive the glory days with you, but they're gone. Or you're gone. There's too much water under the bridge, and the understanding that comes after something has ended can be its own kind of closure, can be its own reward. And that's a bitter pill to swallow, especially if you feel as though there's a lot that's riding on their return, or that there's a lot that's been left unsaid. And this is why communication is so important. But effective communication, good communication, I don't mean shouting matches or arguments, and I don't mean secrets. These are things that are the enemy of happiness. They're the enemy of healthy relationships. They do way more harm than good, and they erode at happiness. The tongue has the ability to speak life into something, but it can also bring about death if the message is muddled, if the shit that matters isn't what's focused on. Again, if the communication is ineffective, if we're not seeking to understand in the process, if we're having a shouting match, how are you ever going to understand each other if you can't talk to each other? And that's a question that's as old as time. And I think that for someone who is so willing to express themselves and to get their point across, I'm talking about you, I just think that it is a shame and a terrible waste of an opportunity when you don't capitalize on that strength that you have to be willing. Because I would say that it's arguably the biggest part of it, right? If you're not willing to talk, if you're not willing to communicate, then you're just living in ignorance. But the difference is that you are willing, and that's the hardest part. So when you sabotage yourself by wasting the opportunity and getting fed up and convincing yourself that you don't really care if they leave, or that you no longer care, so you're now willing to give up and leave. You find yourself in a position where you're down and out, and hoping that the people who matter will see and recognize that you're unhappy, or that you want to make it work, or that you want to try, and this way of handling it is tired and it's not working. Devil card. If you've been watching this channel for a while, then you know that, I'm not really into the whole lip service thing and telling you that everything is going to be all sunshine and rainbows. And this is about self-discovery. This is about self-analysis. This is about accountability. Holding yourself accountable just as much as you're willing to hold other people accountable. Things don't just happen to us. Now, what does effective communication take? What's required? Let's talk about that. Because my intention is not to just read you for this whole time that we're here together in October. Let's talk about what it takes. Let's talk about what it looks like. And, you may be wondering what makes me feel as though I'm qualified to talk about this. It's because I, like you, have been burned. And a fact of life is that there is a potential that you can be burned by other people and also by your own doing. And if you're living and growing in awareness, you look at the situation objectively and you are honest with yourself about what went wrong and why you didn't get the outcome that you wanted. And you do this so that you can avoid that same pitfall in the future. We are not about perpetuating those types of cycles on this channel. We want to grow in awareness. We want to talk about the things that didn't work or that don't work. We want to talk about these cycles so that we can finally build something sustainable that will bolster us and make us sharper, so that when there are new opportunities that come our way, we aren't bleeding all over those relationships and taking our baggage into those relationships and punishing those people for what we experience. That was a hell of a digression, but what does good communication take, right? That's what we were talking about. Well, I think that respect is the minimum. We did a reading with that title for Taurus not that long ago, and it's just as important now as it was then. You cannot have meaningful conversation with someone if you don't respect them, and if they don't respect you. If they don't respect you, you're never going to be able to get through to that person, no matter how hard you try, no matter how careful you are with selecting your words, no matter how you tiptoe around the topic and as you try to get your point across. It will be an exercise in futility because they don't value your opinion and they don't value your perspective. So for good communication to happen, I believe that respect is a very necessary component, mutual respect. you have to understand that that other party is a unique and complex individual who isn't going to automatically see things the way that you see them. You haven't grown and gone through life experiencing the same things, and the lens through which you view life is not the same. So we try to have this meeting of understanding that only comes about when we respect that other person's journey and we respect their experience and we don't discredit it. It may be different than how you think and feel, but you allow yourself to be receptive enough to at least listen as opposed to hearing, if you want the relationship to work or if you want your disagreements or your arguments to be productive. And they have to do this for you too. So we respect this uniqueness and individuality of the person. And respecting it doesn't mean that you have to adopt it. And I think that's where a lot of us get caught up and why, communication oftentimes breaks down. It's because we hear their perspective and it's just so jarring to listen to that you think that it can't be possible for you to both find common ground. And I think that even if you're agreeing to disagree and you decide to go your separate ways, the conversation then is still productive in one way because you have gained so much information about that person and the way that they see things, and you've been able to make an objective and informed decision about how they view the world, and you have an understanding about whether or not there's room in their life for you and your perspective, or whether or not there's room in your life for them and for their perspective, and you get insight about whether or not it can and would work. It would be nice if we saw more of that approach. And I don't think that it's idealistic in talking about this. I just wish that this approach were more normal. And I think that if this straightforward and normal and compassionate approach were adopted by more people, we'd see a lot more forward movement, and we'd see less cycles where people are perpetuating the same behavior and it all ends up being futile. So this way of approaching communication and the relationship dynamic is probably abnormal given today's climate, but I think it's what we need. Being normal is overrated. It involves, this tit for tat culture, this petty culture, this digging your heels into the ground and where you refuse to be moved. It's about it. There's a lot of resistance that comes with it. And I encourage you to be abnormal. I encourage you to go against the grain. I encourage you to rise above and be the better person, live and walk in truth. There's an old fact or secret that I think that someone has been protecting, that they've been guarding for some time. And I think that their unwillingness to be open and honest about it or to address it, this kind of tendency to sweep it under the rug and worry about it later, it's catching up. So if you're that person who has that really important piece of information that would change the game, that would alter the course. It's going to come out whether you want it to or not. But you have a choice about, whether it gets exposed or you exercise some kind of control by being the one to break the silence, by being the one to speak the truth. It's really that, it's this or that. And it comes down to the legacy that you'd like to leave. How do you want to be remembered? If you're looking for more content, check out the Way Out podcast, which is on Spotify podcasts, and it's also available on Apple Podcasts as well if you have an iPhone. Again, I'm sorry that you didn't get a reading. You can find that podcast by just searching The Way Out and my first name, which is Tyson. I hope you found this helpful, truly. And I'll see you next time.